The marble dust clung to Amira's fingernails like accusations, evidence of dreams that didn't belong to girls like her. She scraped at them with her thumb as she stood in the service entrance of Gallery Montclair, clutching a box of crystal stemware that cost more than her monthly rent. The weight of it pressed against her ribs, matching the familiar ache of carrying things too precious for her calloused hands. Through the loading dock doors, she could hear the murmur of tonight's auction preview, voices smooth as aged wine, discussing six-figure acquisitions like grocery lists. Amira had delivered supplies here dozens of times, always through the back, always invisible. The factory paid her extra for these evening runs, and she needed every euro to keep the lights on in her Beauville attic. "Careful with those," snapped Celine Moreau, the gallery's events coordinator, her manicured fingers gesturing dismissively. "They're Baccarat crystal, worth more than." She paused, taking in Amira's oil-stained overalls and work boots. "Well, considerably more than you'd understand." Amira set the box down with deliberate gentleness, biting back words that would cost her the delivery contract. She'd learned long ago that silence was armor in places like this. But as she turned to leave, curiosity betrayed her. Through the open gallery doors, she glimpsed towering canvases and pristine sculptures, each piece bathed in gallery lighting that made everything look sacred. "Excuse me," came a honeyed voice behind her. Amira turned to find a woman in head-to-toe Chanel, her blonde hair twisted into an architectural updo. She was surrounded by a small crowd of admirers, all holding champagne flutes like weapons. "You're blocking the service corridor." "Sorry," Amira muttered, stepping aside. But the woman wasn't finished. "Actually, wait." Her eyes narrowed with cruel amusement. "Aren't you that girl from the factory? The one who thinks she's an artist?" The crowd tittered like hungry birds. "Someone mentioned you leave little sculptures around the neighborhood." How quaint. Heat flooded Amira's cheeks. She thought of the marble piece she'd left at Café Luna last week, a small figure of a woman breaking free from stone chains. It had taken her 3 months of lunch breaks to carve, working with tools borrowed from the factory. "Luxury isn't for girls like you," the woman continued, her voice carrying to the nearby gallery staff. "You belong behind the curtain, not in front of it. Some people are meant to serve beauty, not create it." The laughter that followed felt like shards of the crystal she'd just delivered, cutting deep and leaving no visible wounds. Amira's hands curled into fists, marble dust mixing with sweat in her palms. For one dangerous moment, she imagined what those perfect faces would look like, carved in stone, frozen in their cruelty, their beauty rendered meaningless by their ugliness. Instead, she turned and walked away, the sound of their laughter following her into the Paris night. The streets of the 20th arrondissement welcomed her back, with familiar scents, diesel exhaust, bred from the late-night boulangerie, and the metallic tang of rain on concrete. This was her world, where hands were meant to be dirty and dreams were small enough to fit in cramped apartments. But in her attic studio, surrounded by half-finished sculptures and sketches pinned to water-stained walls, Amira let herself imagine. Otherwise, her latest piece, a life-sized figure of a dancer mid-leap, carved from reclaimed marble she'd found at a demolition site, caught the streetlight. From her single window, the dancer's face was tilted toward an unseen sky, defiant and beautiful. "They don't know," she whispered to the sculpture, running her fingers along the smooth curve of the dancer's extended arm. "They don't know what we can become outside." Paris glittered with lights that belonged to other people's dreams. Inside, Amira Solis continued carving her own from stone and starlight, unaware that across the city, someone was already searching for the anonymous artist whose marble figure had appeared in a viral photograph, tagged simply, "Found at Café Luna." Who is she? The hunt had begun, and the girl behind the curtain was about to step into the light. Nikolai Vale stood in the shadows of Gallery Montclair, watching the evening's pretensions unfold with the detached interest of a man who'd bought and sold entire art movements. His black Tom Ford suit rendered him nearly invisible against the gallery's dark walls, a skill he'd perfected over 2 decades of acquisitions. Most collectors announced themselves. Nikolai preferred to observe. He held his phone, the screen displaying a photograph that had consumed his attention for 3 weeks. A small marble sculpture of a woman breaking free from stone chains, found abandoned at a Beauville café. The composition was raw, urgent, carved by someone who understood suffering not as an aesthetic choice, but as lived experience. Every line screamed authenticity in a world drowning in manufactured emotion. "Monsieur Vale?" Celine Moreau materialized beside him, her voice hushed with reverence. "I didn't expect to see you tonight. Is there a particular piece that's caught your interest?" Nikolai's gray eyes swept across the gallery's offerings. Safe, sanitized works that would appreciate, in value but never truly move anyone. "I'm looking for someone, not something. An artist, unsigned work. Left at Café Luna 3 weeks ago." Celine's expression shifted to confusion. "I'm afraid I don't." Security footage showed a young woman leaving the piece. Dark hair, work, clothes. "She's been placing sculptures throughout Beauville for months." Nikolai's voice carried the quiet authority of someone accustomed to getting answers. "I believe she may have connections to this area." Before Celine could respond, laughter erupted from the gallery's entrance. Nikolai turned to see a cluster of society figures surrounding someone. Near the service corridor, their voices sharp with malicious amusement. One woman's voice cut through the din with particular cruelty. "Luxury isn't for girls like you. You belong behind the curtain, not in front of it." Nikolai moved through the crowd with predatory grace, arriving at the scene just as a young woman in oil-stained overalls turned to leave. Something about her bearing proud despite the humiliation, unbowed despite the obvious hurt, made him look closer. Her hands caught his attention first, marble dust under her fingernails, small scars from carving tools, the calluses of someone who shaped stone with her bare will. "Wait," he called out, his voice cutting through the lingering laughter. The crowd turned, suddenly aware of his presence. Whispers rippled through the group as they recognized him. Nikolai Vale, the phantom collector whose purchases could make or destroy reputations. The young woman stopped but didn't turn around. Her shoulders were rigid with barely contained fury, and Nikolai felt a familiar electric recognition, the same feeling he'd experienced when first seeing a young Basquiat's work, or discovering Kasama before the world knew her name. He approached, slowly, pulling out his phone to display the photograph. "You made this," he said, not a question but a certainty. "And I've been looking for you." Amira finally turned, her dark eyes blazing with defiance and suspicion. Up close, Nikolai could see the intelligence that radiated from her, sharp and unpolished like an uncut diamond. She glanced at the phone, and he watched her expression shift from wariness to shock. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, but her voice betrayed her. The marble dust on her hands told the story her words wouldn't. "Amira Solis," he said, producing a business card from his jacket. "Factory worker by day, sculptor by calling. You leave your pieces like gifts throughout the city, never signing them, never claiming credit. But talent like yours doesn't stay hidden forever." The crowd around them had gone silent, suddenly realizing they were witnessing something significant. The woman who'd mocked Amira moments before now looked between them with dawning horror, understanding that she'd just humiliated someone under the protection of Nikolai Vale. "You're mistaken," Amira said, but she took the card. Nikolai noticed how her fingers trembled slightly as they touched the expensive paper, not from fear, but from the weight of possibility. "I'm never mistaken about art," he replied. "And you, Amira Solis, are the most interesting artist I've encountered in a decade." He stepped closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "They say luxury isn't for girls like you. I say luxury has been waiting its entire existence for girls exactly like you." For a moment, the gallery fell away, and it was just the two of them, the mysterious collector who could reshape destinies, and the factory girl who carved miracles from stone. In her eyes, Nikolai saw something he'd spent millions trying to find, the pure, uncompromising vision of someone who created not for markets or critics, but because her soul would die without it. "Meet me tomorrow," he said, pressing a second card into her palm. "Café Luna, noon. Bring nothing but your hands and your hunger. I have a proposition that will change everything." As he disappeared back into the shadows, Amira stared at the cards in her palm, each one worth more than her monthly salary. The crowd dispersed, their whispers following them like smoke, but she barely noticed. Something had shifted in the universe tonight, and the girl who belonged behind the curtain was about to discover what lay beyond it. Café Luna buzzed with its usual afternoon energy, but Amira barely noticed the familiar chaos of clinking cups and animated conversations. She sat at a corner table, still wearing her factory coveralls. She'd had only 30 minutes between shifts to make this meeting, her hands wrapped around a café au lait she couldn't afford, the warmth doing little to calm her nerves. Nikolai arrived precisely at noon, moving through the crowded café like he owned not just the building but the very air inside it. His casual, elegant screen linen shirt, dark trousers, leather loafers that probably cost more than her yearly rent, made her hyper-aware of her oil-stained appearance. But when he sat across from her, his gray eyes held no judgment, only an intensity that made her pulse quicken. "You came," he said, signaling the server with a subtle gesture that immediately brought attention. "I wasn't certain you would. I almost didn't." Amira's voice was steadier than she felt. "This whole thing feels like someone else's life." Nikolai ordered an espresso, then leaned back to study her with the same focus she'd seen art critics apply to masterpieces. "Tell me about your work. Not the factory or real work." Something in his tone made her forget her insecurities. "I carve what I see that others don't. Pain made beautiful, strength hidden in softness. The way light breaks on a woman's face when she realizes she's not broken, just bent." The words tumbled out, surprising her with their honesty. "And you leave them unsigned. Anonymous gifts to the world. Art shouldn't be about the signature," Amira said, her passion overriding her nervousness. "It should speak for itself. When people see my work, I want them to feel something, not wonder about the artist's market value." Nikolai smiled, the first genuine expression she'd seen from him, spoken like someone who's never had to eat, but also like someone who understands what art really is. He pulled out a tablet, swiping to reveal images that made Amira's breath catch. Her sculptures filled the screen, not just the cafe piece, but others she'd placed throughout the city. Someone had been photographing them, documenting their locations, tracking her anonymous installations like breadcrumbs through Paris. "You've been following my work," she said, uncertain whether to feel flattered or invaded. "I've been following excellence. These pieces," he paused on an image of her latest sculpture, the dancer mid-leap, "they have something most contemporary. Art lacks soul, raw, uncompromising truth carved from stone." Amira stared at the screen, seeing her work through his eyes. In the gallery last night, surrounded by pristine pieces with 5-figure price tags, her sculptures had seemed crude and amateur. But here, in these carefully composed photographs, they looked powerful, revolutionary. "I have a proposition," Nikolai continued. "Come to Italy with me. My estate in Carrara has studios filled with the finest marble in the world, the same stone Michelangelo used. Create whatever your vision demands. I'll provide materials, space, time, no interference, no expectations beyond what your talent produces naturally." The offer hit her like physical force. "I can't just leave. I have responsibilities. The factory job, my rent handled. I'll cover your expenses for 6 months. If your work meets the potential I see in these photographs, we'll discuss a more permanent arrangement." His voice carried the casual confidence of someone for whom money was merely a tool. "This is how careers are born, Amira. One moment of courage, one leap into the unknown." She thought of last night's humiliation, the laughter that had followed her into the street. Then she looked at her reflection in the cafe window, a young woman whose hands told stories of double shifts and borrowed dreams. What would those gallery people say if she walked back in wearing linen instead of coveralls? "Why me?" she asked. "You could commission established artists, people with galleries and reputations." Nikolai leaned forward, his intensity making the busy cafe disappear around them. "Because established artists have learned to lie beautifully. They create what sells, what fits into predetermined categories. You carve truth from stone because you don't know how to do anything else. That authenticity is rarer than perfect technique." The weight of his words settled over her like a mantle. This wasn't just about marble and tools, it was about transformation, about stepping from the shadows into light so bright it might burn. "I need time to think," she said finally. "Of course." Nikolai stood, leaving a €50 note on the table for 2 coffees. "But don't think too long. Moments like this don't wait for our comfort." He handed her a plain ticket. tomorrow evening. If you're brave enough, the choice is entirely yours." As he walked away, Amira stared at the ticket in her hands. Rome to Pisa, first class. Her name printed in elegant font, like she was someone who belonged in first class. Around her, the cafe continued its cheerful chaos, but she felt suspended between worlds, the one where she was nobody special, and another where her dreams might have room to breathe. That night, surrounded by her sculptures in the cramped attic, Amira made her choice. She touched each piece goodbye, whispering promises to the stone dancers and warriors who'd kept her company through years of doubt. Tomorrow, she would discover what lay beyond the curtain she'd spent her life behind. The girl who carved truth from stone was about to learn what happened when the world finally noticed. 6 months later, Amira stood in the center of Gallery Montclair. But this time she entered through the front door. The same space that had witnessed her humiliation now showcased Verit's Sculptor, her first solo exhibition. Spotlights illuminated her marble figures, the woman breaking free from chains, now life-sized and magnificent. The dancer mid-leap, captured at the moment of perfect defiance, and 12 other pieces born from Carrara marble and months of fearless creation. The transformation hadn't been easy in Italy. Surrounded by Nicolai's quiet support and infinite resources, she'd discovered that having everything she needed was its own kind of pressure. The first month, she'd barely carved anything, paralyzed by the weight of expectation and the beauty of her surroundings. The marble seemed too pure, too precious for her rough hands. "Create what you've always created," Nicolai had told her during one of their evening walks through his estate's sculpture garden. "The only difference is now you have better tools." He'd been right, but only partially. The real difference was learning to trust that her vision belonged in spaces this beautiful, that her truth, carved from years of struggle and doubt, deserved to stand alongside centuries of artistic legacy. Now, watching Paris's cultural elite circulate through her exhibition, Amira felt the surreal completeness of a journey she'd never dared imagine. Critics who'd never heard her name 6 months ago now spoke of her revolutionary authenticity and sculptural fearlessness. Collectors whispered about acquisition opportunities, their voices hushed with the reverence previously reserved for dead masters. The artist herself, said a familiar voice behind her. Amira turned to find Céline Moreau, the gallery coordinator who'd supervised her humiliation. Now Céline's smile was radiant, her voice warm with manufactured intimacy. "Amira, darling, this exhibition is absolutely transformative. I've been telling everyone how I knew you'd be special from the moment I met you." Amira studied the woman's face, searching for any recognition of their previous encounter. Finding none, she simply nodded. "How kind of you to say." Across the gallery, she spotted the blonde woman who declared luxury wasn't for girls like her. Tonight, she wore different Chanel but the same superior expression, though now it carried an edge of uncertainty. Their eyes met briefly, and Amira saw something flicker there, not quite recognition, but an uncomfortable awareness of shifting ground. "Magnificent, isn't it?" Nicolai appeared beside her, resplendent in a midnight blue suit that made his gray eyes look like storm clouds. Over the months in Italy, their relationship had evolved from patron and artist to something more complex, built on shared silences in the sculpture garden, hands touching as they examined stone textures, conversations that lasted until dawn, about art and truth and the price of authenticity. "Sometimes I still can't believe it's real," Amira admitted. She wore emerald silk tonight, a dress Nicolai had commissioned from a Roman atelier, cut to complement her natural elegance rather than disguise her strength. 6 months ago, "I was nobody. You were never nobody," he said firmly. "You were simply unseen. There's a difference." The evening's culmination came when Nicolai guided her to the gallery's center, where a cloth-covered sculpture waited on a marble pedestal. The crowd gathered, champagne glasses catching gallery lights like captured stars. "Ladies and gentlemen," Nicolai's voice carried effortlessly through the space. "Tonight celebrates more than remarkable artistry. It celebrates the courage to see talent where others see only assumptions." His eyes found the blonde woman in the crowd, his smile sharp as carved marble. 6 months ago, someone in this very gallery declared that luxury wasn't for girls like Amira Solis. Tonight, I present Evidence to the contrary. He pulled away the cloth, revealing a life-sized marble sculpture that drew gasps from the assembled crowd. It was Amira herself, carved with meticulous detail, but not as she appeared tonight in silk and diamonds. Instead, Nikolai had captured her as she truly was, in work clothes, marble dust on her hands, her face turned upward with an expression of defiant hope. The sculpture's base bore a simple inscription, "The girl who refused to bow." Amira's breath caught. In the stone version of herself, she saw everything she'd been afraid to claim: strength without apology, beauty without compromise, worth that existed independent of others' recognition. The crowd erupted in applause, but she heard only the whisper of her own carved hands, forever reaching toward light. "You made me remember who I was before the world tried to tell me who to be," she said to Nikolai, her voice thick with emotion. "I didn't change you," he replied, his fingers intertwining with hers. "I simply gave you room to rise later." As the evening wound down and the last admirers filtered into the Paris night, Amira stood alone with her sculptures, each piece told part of her story: the struggle, the doubt, the moment when courage overcame fear. But more than that, they represented something larger: the transformation that happened when talent met opportunity, when someone who'd been invisible stepped fully into the light. The blonde woman approached hesitantly, her earlier confidence replaced by something resembling shame. "I owe you an apology," she said quietly. "What I said that night was cruel and wrong. Your work is extraordinary." Amira considered her response carefully. "Thank you for saying that. But the work was always extraordinary. The only thing that changed was who was looking." As the woman walked away, Amira touched the hand of her marble self, the girl who refused to bow. Tomorrow, there would be commissions and interviews, gallery openings and collector meetings. She would navigate the luxury world that had once rejected her, not as an interloper, but as someone who belonged there by right of vision and craft. But tonight, surrounded by stone figures that breathed with captured life, Amira Solis knew the most important truth: she hadn't been rescued. She had simply been seen. And sometimes, being truly seen was the greatest luxury of all. The curtain had fallen away completely, revealing not a stage, but a doorway and the girl who had walked through it, marble dust still under her fingernails, carrying her truth like a torch into rooms that had been waiting centuries for her arrival.